Hi everybody, welcome back. We're now going to paint the weights on the legs. So we're going to pop down and we're going to select our leg object, and we're going to take a look in the paint skin weights to see what influences we've got. Now obviously in a previous video we did do a quick test to see sort of what moves. And you can see here we're getting this really weird deformation. The shins just kind of flare out. We get a weird fold on the feet, and the thighs completely turn inside out. So it would appear that we need to do some massive amount of work kind of tweaking these legs. So as with the body, I need to determine what is actually controlling the legs. It might be that some of these joints haven't been included. So we're going to select the leg. We're going to come up to the skin menu and select paint skin weights options. And we need to take a look and see what joints are in there and what joints aren't in there. So there's several joints that we don't need to control the legs. We don't need the root joint, because the root joint isn't actually inside any of the leg geometry, and that might be what's causing a lot of the collapsing going on in the thighs when the legs bend. We certainly don't need the body up here. This section has nothing to do with the legs at all. We do need the hips, we do need the knees, the ankles, the feet, and the toes. Although technically speaking the toe is an optional influence, we probably don't need those at all. We can probably just rely on the foot joint, I would say. So I think what we need to do is we need to remove the influence of the toe, the root, and the body, and just leave the hip down to the foot. Yes, that's going to be the plan. So I'm just going to unlock the root and the body. The reason they were locked is that we locked them in the last video, and they were sharing an influence obviously with the body they were controlling. So now on the feet, what we're going to do is remove the root, the body, and the two toe joints. So let's turn that tool off. I'm going to select the root, shift select the body, and shift select both toe joints. Now with the toes, don't forget, select the joint, not the IK handle. It can be a bit tricky. You might need to zoom in. All right. I'm going to shift select the foot object. Once again, it's the object, not the IK handle, not the control handle. It's the actual model. We're going to go to skin, edit influences, remove influence, like that. So now if I select the object and I go back into my paint skin weights, I can see that I've got my left hip, knee, ankle, and foot, and the right hip, knee, ankle, and foot. Okay, so what we can do is we can test to see what change that has made to the deformation. So I'm going to turn the tool off. I'm going to select one of my feet controls, grab the move tool, and I'm going to move that around. It hasn't really made much of a change. I'm still getting that weird collapsing leg. I'm still getting that little kind of crease in the foot, and I'm also still getting the leg flaring out a lot like this. So let's go in and fix these weights. So I'm going to select the object, and I'm only going to work on the left foot. Then what I'm going to do once that works is I'm going to mirror the weights across to the right foot. Okay, so paint skin weights tool again. And what I can actually do here technically is probably select the model. It might be an idea to select the joints as well. I think I'll do that. So I'll select the model, I'll shift select both hip joints, and then click isolate select. What that'll do is just show the hip joints, or the actual leg joints, plus the model. Okay. So now if I select the model and I open up my paint skin weights tool, I can click the joints and I can still see the joint selecting blue, so I know which one it is, and I can also see the influence. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to have the left hip joint only control the top up here, which looks correct. It's already white, but I want it to go down to basically the knee, roughly. okay, down to here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock everything except for the knee, the left knee and the left hip, like this. Let's have a look. Yeah, I think I'll do it that way. All right. So I don't want the hip controlling anything down here. So what I'm going to do is set the value to 0, and it's on replace, and I'm going to brush across the edges down here below the knee. So anything down on the ankle and anything sort of just below here on the knee. You might need to adjust the size of your brush. So these should all be 0. Okay. Now a bit later on what we're going to be doing is selecting vertices in here and actually flooding the value to apply a specific value to a specific joint. All right. So I've got the top and I've got sort of that section there. All right, so the next joint down is the knee, just here. And for the knee, I don't want anything at the top highlighted, okay? So with a value still, I'm going to replace this bit at the top. I'm going to delete this bit at the top here. Like this. So the top sections up here are black. Technically I could also remove this bit down here as well. Because I want this bit to really go with the thigh, you know, or this hip joint. Anything from the knee and below is what I want the knee to rotate. So I don't really want the knee rotating this bit here, like this. So the knee basically is going to bend this bit here. Okay, something like that. Okay, so I'm now going to lock the left hip, and I'm going to unlock the left ankle, switch down to the ankle. And I don't want the ankle controlling anything at the top here, so I'm going to paint the influence out here. And it can be a little bit fiddly. I'm sort of, you know, repeatedly sort of clicking and dragging across these joints to kind of paint them out. And what I could do technically is probably remove the influence off this edge just here as well. Although the tool doesn't seem to be activating that. Yeah, so once again, this might be a bit of an issue where it's not really... yeah, I know why. The reason that that's happening is the model is smooth. If you press 1 on your keyboard, it'll unsmooth. And then if you zoom right down to the joint down here, you can actually paint where the vertices are. So unfortunately, this tool doesn't recognize the smoothed out geometry, and it will try and read only if you put the brush where the vertex really is, which, you know, for a smooth object is not going to be necessarily where you see the edge. It's going to be further away. So when it's unsmooth, the edge is really here. When you smooth it, the edge jumps up the leg up here. So if you're painting up here, it's not actually painting on the vertex because that's still down here somewhere. Okay, so it'd be something like that. Okay, so the ankle is going to control all of that. Okay, including this. Now, what I want to do here is make sure that this is all painted 100%. Just in the bottom corner here. So I'm going to hit value, I'm going to increase it up to 1, and then I'm going to paint that back in there, just around this edge. Now you've got to be careful not to hit that section, so I'm going to come and fix that up in a second. Once again, if you press 1 on your keyboard, you can unsmooth it, and then you can just paint those 2 bottom sections in there like that. And try not to hit anything on this edge, which is what I did just before on this one. So what I have to do now there is drop that back down to 0 for the value, and then just paint that vertex back in. Like that. Okay. Now for this middle one, just here, I want the front end to be painted white for the toe. So if I go to the left foot, or it's actually the foot joint, I want all of this to be painted here for this joint, for the foot joint. So I'm going to, let's have a quick look here. I'm going to unlock the foot joint. I'm going to lock the knee. So what I've got is the ankle and the foot, and that way I can transfer a lot of this just purely down into here as well. So I'm just going to make my brush a bit bigger. I've got my foot selected. I've got my value set to 1, and I'm just going to paint over the whole front foot section in here. Now I do sort of want to be careful not to go sort of up into here, because I don't want all of this necessarily to be controlled by this. So just something like this. Okay, and then if I jump back up to the ankle, I can just make sure that I've got the actual ankle vertices back here painted. Be careful not to go too far up onto these vertices here, because we've already fixed those. We don't want to have to paint them again. Let's paint those in like that. So you can see now we're only getting partial influence over here, and that's because we've sort of painted that influence onto the foot, like the toe section. So we can sort of just go in here like this, and then jump back down to the foot joint and just paint those back in like that. Sometimes it's a little bit of going back and forth, but that's pretty normal when you're painting weights. So something like that. So what I'm going to do is a bit of a smoothing operation on this now. So these are all sort of influenced now. And just to help a bit of the deformation, I'm going to smooth this. Now, this has still got a lot of influence from the ankle here. So I'm just going to sort of remember it's these vertices sort of just here. Going to the foot, and I'm going to paint those in. Just make sure that they're all completely white. If I jump back to the ankle, it should be almost black now. So I've still got a little bit over here. Probably this one here the most. So I'll just paint that back in white. And you can see that's kind of fixed now. So that's pretty good. It's not too bad. All right. So on the foot, I'm going to select that. And I'm going to come down to smooth for my option, or my operation. I'm going to flood just once. I'm going to go to the ankle, and I'm going to flood that. Now I will turn off the knee lock. I'll flood that. That's going to go a little bit up the leg, and it's also going to go a little bit down the foot. I'm then going to go to the knee, and I'm going to unlock the hip, and I'm going to flood that once. And you can see it's going to put a tiny little bit of influence up the leg. So each section blends from one section to the next, like that. Okay, so if I turn my tool off and I de-isolate everything so I can see all my controllers again, I can switch off the joint x-ray because I don't really need to see the joint, and I press 3 on the keyboard to smooth my foot out. What I can do is test to see what that deformation looks like. So if I lift the foot control, you can see there that the upper leg bends okay, but the shin is still going crazy, and the foot's still going a bit mad as well. So we've definitely still got some problems with the control there. I don't know which joint it is. I'm going to x-ray the joints again, and I'm going to rotate the foot control this time. So I can see it's definitely, I think it's definitely got something to do with the ankle. You can see there that it kind of pinches at the back, and it's definitely doing something weird over here at the front. the way that that's bending. It could also be the position of the joints, perhaps. Although technically speaking, it probably shouldn't do that. All right, so let's take a look at the weights again. So I'm going to select the object again, go back into skin weights, and this is sort of what the process is. Already I can see an issue there. So you can see here, when I've got the knee selected, I've got sort of like a bit of influence here, but this section here is a bit dark, so it doesn't have the same amount of influence, which means, and it's the same at the back here. So what that means is when I'm bending this joint, this is going to not move, this vertex won't move as much, and either will these. So depending on the angle I rotate it, it's going to cause pinching. So that's part of the problem there. So what I need to do is sort of kind of add some influence in there a little bit. So I'm going to go to replace, leave the value at 1, and what I want to do is sort of repaint that value in here. I'm going to turn off the joint X-ray as well, and I'll unsmooth. So it's actually sort of this point just here. I'm going to shrink my brush right down and just add influence into here a little bit, like this. I'm going to go all the way around the back, just increase that influence. But I'm being careful not to go down onto this bottom edge, because if I do, it's going to kind of throw the whole thing out of whack again. So let's get all of that in there. And then what I'm going to do is switch over to smooth, and I'm going to flood. And you can see there it equalizes it a little bit better. Like that. So that hopefully will improve the bending down there. Now on the foot joint, just there, actually I can check the ankle. The ankle up here looks okay. It's a little bit iffy at the back. I'm going to flood that with smooth a couple of times. That's just going to help blend that a bit. But what I want to do is maybe add a little bit more of a separation of the colors here. So I'm going to go back into the foot, and the foot joint's this one here. So primarily I want the front end to be bent with that, but I want to maybe get a bit more of this edge controlled with it. So what I'm going to do is switch back to replace. I'm still on a value of 1, and what I'm going to do here is definitely paint this middle line in so it's completely white. Something like that. And that might help to kind of control that a bit. I can also smooth that, so if I hit smooth and flood, that'll help blend that a bit. Now you can see here, this is where we're getting an issue. So I think this is what's causing that weird stretching to occur. You can see here that the foot is actually going up, the grey influence is now going up the leg, but it's black here. So nothing on the foot is influencing this, but it is influencing the front and back, which means when I bend the foot, the front and the back is going to stretch because it's going to try and follow the toe. It's going to move with the toe. So I need to make sure that those sections are actually kind of removed. So I'm going to hit, let's have a quick look here. I'm going to lock the ankle. I'm going to lock the hip, and I'm going to switch to the, let's see. I'm going to lock the knee joint and unlock the ankle and switch to the ankle, I think. Yeah. So you can see there the ankle's got this black line. That means it's not being controlled. That vertex isn't being controlled by the ankle when it should be. So if I switch foot to foot and then I remove, so set my paint operation to replace and then reduce the value, I can then paint around this top section of the ankle, and it'll transfer that to the ankle. I'm taking it off the foot, so it'll actually move that to the ankle. I'm getting a little message down the bottom there, and I think yeah, that's weird. It's saying that I can't, it's not going to transfer it because of the locked influences, but the ankle is, I think it's because there was nothing on the ankle to begin with. It might have been on the knee. Yeah, if I click on the foot, if I unlock the knee and click the foot, I can see that that's actually still on the foot. And it's because the ankle didn't have any influence. So let's have a look here. Yeah, I want to put 100% on the knee. That's the one that's all white there. So I'm going to put the value of 1 to there and then paint that edge just there. And that should take the influence off the other joints. And then what I can do is lock the foot and then go back to the knee. And so if I go to the foot, that should now be black. Yep, that's fine. So if I lock the foot and then take a look at the knee, these are the ones that it's kind of shared across. What I can do there is I can flood that with the smooth. So hit smooth, flood, and that'll kind of, you can see there, it evens out again there. Maybe even flood it twice. So now the knee should be white all the way down. The ankle's kind of grey, although that's freaking out again, so I need to fix that up. And the foot's okay. So I need to fix this. The ankle shouldn't have any influence up here at all. That should be all 100% knee. So I'll hit replace, value of 1, and paint that in for the knee. And I'm just going to go right around the knee there, just to make sure that they're all 100% just here. And what that's doing is taking away from the ankle, because that's the only other unlocked one. So you can see with this process, there's a lot of back and forth, and it can get extraordinarily frustrating sometimes. It really does. Maya is not great for this kind of process, in part because a lot of the time you might rely on these brush tools, and they're kind of annoying. I'm also going to paint this one in here. Yeah. Different software has different variations of this tool. Lightwave had a great system where you basically just selected the points and then you typed in a number for them. That was you could do a paintbrush thing, but it never used to work. And this is sort of similar. Okay, I think that's kind of okay now. So for now, I'm just going to unlock everything, and I'm going to turn the tool off and then just test that again. I can smooth the object as well. I'm still expecting to get some weird stuff on the foot, but mainly I just want to make sure the leg's working. So even now, you can see even now the knee works fine, but this ankle, this point in the front of the ankle just here, that's a definite problem. This one just here. That's the one that kind of keeps popping out. And I think what's happening is it's connected to something in the foot down here. So when the foot moves, this thing pulls with it. So I'm going to select that vertex. Now, keep in mind, I'm doing all of this. This might not be affecting yours at all. Yours might be working absolutely fine. It's just one of these things. So I'm going to select that vertex, and I'm going to try and force it into taking the correct weight. So I've got all of the weights unlocked. I'm going to unsmooth this. So you can see how far it's pulled out. Like that's pulled out way down here into the foot. So I'm actually thinking if that's up there, I reckon that might be connected to the hip. I have a feeling that one might be connected to the hip. Yeah. You can see how that's grey down there. When I select the hip, it's down here. So that's what's doing it. It should not be connected to that hip at all. Now I had the hip locked earlier on, so when I was painting these, it wasn't removing that influence from the hip because it was locked. That's part of the problem. When you paint it, it looks like it's removing it, but then when you click on something else, it comes back because it was locked. So what I need to do with those unlocked like that, I need to paint this value. I need to paint this value back, I think, to the knee. Yeah. So I'm just going to hit replace value of 1 and flood it, and you can see it pops back up. So that's what it was. So one vertex was sort of a bit out of whack. And, you know, that's part of the frustration with this system. You know, you're having to balance things. And because it doesn't have like because the influence always has to exist somewhere, it just shifts back and forth from things you've already fixed. Okay. So this knee joint's influencing the foot, which it really shouldn't be. Just here. Yeah, that shouldn't be influencing that far down. That's what's causing that crease, is because these are kind of being connected to the foot. So what I can do there, I'm going to just take a quick look at the hip. I'm going to lock the hip because that seems to be okay now. The knee is influencing this, so I can't lock that. It's actually influencing part of the toe for some reason. I want that to be added to the ankle. And then the foot seems to be okay. So I'm going to lock the foot, and I'm just going to I'm going to remove this off the ankle by adding it to the knee. So what I want is a value of 1, replace, and I want to add that influence into the knee. Now I can't do it because this vertex is selected. So I can hit deselect. Nope, I'll just turn the tool off and deselect it that way. Switch the tool back on. Got to select the object first. Switch the tool back on. Ankle. Okay. Yeah, so you can see there now when I add the influence back only to the ankle, the foot actually ends up in the right spot. Yeah, this is one of the frustrating things with Maya's weight painting system. You know, the fact that the influences have to exist somewhere means they're always bouncing from one thing to the next. And even if you've got a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit of influence on something, it can actually, it can cause that influence to kind of increase in value without you realizing it sometimes. You know, so even these bits here where they should be 100% controlled by the ankle, they keep shifting off. You know, like when you try and smooth the results out a little bit by flooding the smooth button on it, it sometimes causes it to kind of lose influence where it should have full influence. And that gets really annoying real quick. So like in here, this really should be full influence, but it's hard to get it to take that influence properly sometimes. There we go, that's probably okay. I can smooth it to have a look, and that sort of looks all right. But once again, you can see here, that's gone black, which means there's zero influence of this joint on the ankle. So if I go knee, I can add in 100% influence on those ones there. But you can see here, there shouldn't be any influence of the knee on the heel. See, so it's still kind of jumping around a bit. So I'm just going to paint those completely black. There we go. See, there's still influence on the toe. So you get all these little influences here and there that are very hard to spot sometimes. And sometimes they're not there, and then, you know, you change something, you come back to it and it's there. So a bit of a pain. Now that's probably not going to... So this is one of the things, right? The foot was locked. So I've just taken some influence off the foot and it looks like it's fixed. When I click on the knee again, sometimes if I go to the foot and then back to the knee, sometimes it'll actually remove. So I've got to be very careful with that. If I unlock the foot, you know, you might find that there's influence where there shouldn't be any. Very difficult to control sometimes. All right, so let's see if we're now getting a proper deformation. That's actually looking pretty good. Haven't really checked the foot. I think the foot down here is going to be a bit limited, but we'll see what happens. Now, I actually had the foot moved up when I was painting those weights. You can do that. Obviously, we're moving the foot control to move the foot. So I can just go back into the channel box and type in zeros for the foot control, like that. And what I can do now is test these foot controls here, especially things like tiptoe. So if I dial tiptoe up and down, you can see the character's ankle bends okay like that. And you can see that the leg is going okay. So that all works without any problem. Type in a 0 to fix that up. The toe tap's one of the ones I'm interested in because I want to see sort of how the foot bends. So you can see there, that foot, the toe bends okay, but the toe's pushing the ankle down. That ankle shouldn't be flattening like that. And that means that there's an issue with the weighting on the toe. The toe is influencing the ankle for some reason. So if I select the object and go back into the paint weights, go to the tool settings and I select the foot toe, yeah, you can see for some reason the toe is now influencing all of this up here. This is the frustrating thing with weight painting. You've got to keep going back and forth. So I'm going to just keep tweaking this by, you know, locking, you know, things. So I know that the knee's okay now. So it's just the balance between the foot and the ankle. So if I paint the foot values off on here, it'll add them to the ankle. So if I set the value to 0 and I replace and I paint around this section of the foot, when I've got the toe, I'm doing the influence for the toe here, what that'll do is it'll keep the foot where the heel where it is when the foot bends, when the toe bends, like that. So you've got to kind of go through and do all of these sort of, you know, these settings with it to get it to work right. And it is handy to actually change the control settings to test it when it's doing different things. Okay, so then if I go back into the foot control, back into the channel box, and I change that back to 0, and I, you know, sort of do that, that works okay. And if I do the heel up, that also works okay now. So that leg is set up after half an hour of messing around with it. So yeah, you can see there, that's sort of working okay now. So if I lift the leg up, you can see the knee works. The leg bends nicely at the knee. I can rotate the foot control around and the leg will go with it. So that's all working okay now. All right, so what we do is we select the foot and we need to mirror the weight across. So we come up to skin and we go to mirror skin weights. I'm going to go to the options and double check to see what we've got. So we've got YZ, so that's basically going to be our X axis, and we're going from positive to negative. So we're going from the positive side, which is the side that this indicator is pointing along, to the negative side. We're going to leave everything else where it is. Okay, and I'm just going to hit mirror. So now, if I check the other foot should work exactly the same way. And it seems to be doing that. If I rotate that around, you can see it bends nicely at the ankle and at the knee. So that's basically our feet done. Now, it's exactly the same process for the arms. We can check the arms really quickly to see whether or not they're actually functioning properly. We do have a little bit of an issue up here. You can see there that that's actually collapsing down. Probably what's occurring there is that we're getting influence off the pelvis joint, the body joint again, maybe some of the spine. I do believe the hand looks pretty good though. If I rotate this controller around, yeah, we do need to fix up a little bit of the weighting on the forearm. But the actual hand itself looks like it's working pretty well. And based on what I saw of the joints earlier, the joints in the fingers were all working very well as well. So if I hit select hierarchy and then rotate that round, you can see that the fingers bend quite nicely. We can double check the thumb. That looks pretty good. So yeah, I think it's really just the arm. It's going to be like three joints in here that need to be tweaked, and the hand is pretty much good to go. All right, so I'm going to leave this video here. In the next video, I'm going to do the arm, pretty much the same process as the leg. So I'll probably just do it pretty quickly. I might edit some bits out just so we're not kind of covering the same things as we did with the legs. But basically, once that's done, we're pretty much good to animate. Everything is ready to go. So we'll leave this one here, and I'll see you in the next video.